Okay, this is what I came up with the diesel heater and the hot water heater and the water pump and my cold and hot water system. And this is the last ugly wire that's kind of hanging loose, but it is staying this way because it is the pump switch. Right now I've got the pump on to double check that I don't have any leaks. So far it hasn't turned back on again, so looks good there. Hot water heater is a 4-gallon under sink hot water heater, and it actually works really well. It's pretty quick, heats up in about 10 minutes, and then it's over, and it's 4 gallons of like scalding. You can make it scalding hot if you really want. That way it heats up, and you can take probably a 6 to 7 gallon shower, which is plenty for me. And yeah, it only takes 10 minutes or so to shut off. I'm gonna make a on-off, shut-off switch for it, so that it doesn't just sit there and suck up power all the time. When you're operating on a battery system, that's not good. So that'll be an eventual thing. Until then, I'll just plug in, plug out when I want to use it. Again, I'm not using it right now because I just don't need it right now. So right now I've got an old chopped up hot plate pad, or a oven mitt type of deal. Just stuffed in the extra hole here because the old propane heater, this was the intake for that, and this was the, I'm not sure if I have that right, but I think this was the exhaust and this was the inlet. So now I've cut the shapes that I need to squeeze the metal down to wrap around the exhaust, which turned out pretty well. It doesn't take up a whole lot of room. It runs great. And so I've got the main switch, comes off the side, and I have to get that a little more organized back there so it's not close to this exhaust heater. I don't have the heat wrap on here yet because it hasn't arrived in the mail. This is the main switch. I've got that tucked back in there pretty well. The diesel runs close enough underneath here to the exhaust that I had to kind of cinch it down and get it safely away from the exhaust. That, in my opinion, that is the biggest flaw to the heater system, is that the inlet, the air intake, and the exhaust are too close together for comfort, and they are competing for space when realistically the exhaust is very hot and it's mounted right next to where the diesel goes in. I know it's not a problem really of igniting the diesel, but it is kind of a problem with potentially burning the fuel line. So yeah, it's just something to pay attention to if you buy one of these. I reorganized the inlet and I've just got it sitting over here. I don't really see it being a problem. It's not going to go anywhere, but I am going to put I'm going to get it cinched down and kind of permanently positioned, which isn't really a big deal. This is all just kind of loose. It's not loose, but it's secured. It's just allowed to move kind of freely. Anyway, I think the install was fairly clean. Oh, I also got a sheet of tin, and I replaced the, well, I just covered up the hole. I've got some of that, this stuff. I've got some of this stuff, 3 layers in that space to prevent air getting through. I also replaced the boards that I had there, and I re-plumbed the hot water heater so it's not turned sideways, but it is a little more organized now, and the knob's facing forward. And I ended up with a lot more room. I'm gonna have under sink room, which is gonna be nice because the old hot water heater came out to here. It's roughly 10 inches, and it was about, it didn't leave any room. There are gonna be, in this area, there's gonna be a couple of the vent hoses that are going to run over and around to the outlets for the main cabin heat. And but other than that, that is about 18 inches of storage space, and there's an access on each of these points for under the sink. You can't see it now, but I'll show you later. Anyway, it ended up being a lot cleaner than it was, and it works great. So I can show it to you when it runs, which is, I'll just go ahead and start it up and show you. And there it's starting its rotation. Thing works great. I've slept in here with it running for 2 nights now. It's been pretty close to freezing outside, and in 2 days I've used just over maybe just over a gallon, somewhere in there. And I've left it running for, it's been about 10 hours, 10 or 12 hours. The first day I think it ran for closer to 12 or 13 hours because I was testing stuff out, and had to get the fuel line primed, and just I had to get it all tested out. So it's not very loud. It's when it starts up it's a little louder, but once the kitchen sink is covering all of this, it's really easy to handle. The amount of noise is going to be pretty negligible. With this old trailer, one thing that has been happening to me is I've got old batteries in here now, and they're dead. They're like, they don't hold any charge at all. So the battery charger is constantly charging them, and they are going up to 18 volts over voltage. So I'm getting the error alarm for the heater. You can hear it starting up now. Anyway, so I'm getting an error alarm for the heater, and it is throwing a code. So what I've done is I have to turn on some lights to get it to drop the voltage down so the thing will start up. Once it runs, though, it keeps a constant drain on the battery, so it doesn't allow the battery charger to overcharge the system. So I've got it's fairly quiet. I've got a gel battery on the way from Rhenology, and I'm realizing that I'm going to have to also buy a voltage protection so that it doesn't damage the battery too. which is fine. I think they're like $100 or something. It's just something I didn't really expect to buy. But I'll probably buy a nice one, because that way I can tell how much I'm pulling, and I can just monitor things a little bit better. I do eventually plan, if I keep this RV or this motorhome, I eventually do plan on having somewhat of a battery bank to be able to truly off-grid for periods of time comfortably. So I'm gonna turn this right now. I mean, even now I don't have the exhaust fully sealed, and it typically it does have some smoke when you first start it up. And I've been videoing, I didn't see any smoke in here, so that is a fairly reasonable way to vent the exhaust. But like I said, I do have heat tape on the way, and I am going to seal that area there. I'm going to get a heavy duty exhaust hitch or exhaust, I forget what they call those, but I'm going to basically clamp that down and take as much of the gaps as I can out of it. And it should work fine. I won't have a problem, building a kitchen over the top of that, and I won't really be worried about future chemicals or fires or anything. I am going to secure this a little better. It's not clamped down to the floor or screwed in or anything right now. I just using all of this time to kind of get things in place and buttoned up the right way. The hot water heater just kicked off. So, like I said, about 10 minutes to heat up. And now I've got hot water in here. Pump hasn't kicked back on, so that means I don't have any leaks. And now I can work on getting the rest of this place cleaned up. That's on 4. It's not as high as this thing will go, so let me turn it up all the way to the 5.5. And it'll take a minute for it to recognize that I've turned it up. It should kick on a little bit higher from there. But I'm not talking loud. This is basically regular room talking voice here, and I don't know how well you're going to be able to hear me, but it's not so loud that it's unbearable, even at the highest setting. But in an RV this size, I can't see needing to have this thing run on the highest setting unless it is 0 degrees outside or so for any real length of time. So I'm impressed. I think that's a great little invention. I think eventually, if you lengthen the exhaust system and leverage the exhaust heat, maybe with a coil wrap around, you could even use the exhaust heat to make a heat sink for hot water as well. So I've actually kind of been thinking about doing that. because any power that you don't have to use to heat water is probably to your benefit. So if you can have a constant, basically the exhaust gets hot enough that it would cause water inside of a copper tube to boil and circulate. So if you could leverage that exhaust pipe wrapped in a copper coil and then wrapped with heat tape around it, or ceramic, whatever that stuff, that heat wrap, I believe that you could get a circulation just with the excess heat from the exhaust, and it wouldn't affect the way that the heater runs, and it would be basically more energy that you'd gather from, you know, the single-use diesel burn, which is, I think would be, I might play around with that idea later on. I don't know. But it's running great. And shortly, I'm gonna put the kitchen back together and get a kitchen sink going and a kitchen counter and my induction cooktop put on. And I'm gonna get this area rebuilt with a range hood and a small microwave on top. And it should be a pretty nice little RV after that. I think I'm gonna get rid of this jackknife couch too, because it's old. And I don't know if it's worth trying to repair it or refurbish it. So I gotta get a fridge as well. Those are expensive, so I've been kind of delaying that to see, because I can live without a fridge right now. Not a big deal. But that's the heater on full blast. It's not that loud. It heats up quick. Makes this whole, I can heat the whole place with, you know, minimal diesel use. But it's only a 20-foot or 28-foot motorhome, so it's not that large. Anyway, until next time, bye.